Welcome, everyone. My name is Luke Thomas. This is the MMA Beat. We're here in New York City. It is, Thursday, May 30th, 2019. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate it. You know me from MMA Fighting as well as SiriusXM, and I am joined by two long-faced, esteemed panelists. Mr. Bigote himself is to my left, the one and only Danny Segura from MMA Fighting. And at the very end, where was I the other day? I was at a restaurant with my wife. Actually, before I saw him, it was on a Sunday. And the bar had on that show you do on Fox Sports 1.
PBC Face to Face.
Face to Face. And I was like, I can't believe that the guy who talks about gas station food on the show that I host is also repping himself on national TV. Brian Campbell.
Modern day Renaissance man, if you will.
You truly are. From CBS Sports, again, FS1, is that a fair?
PBC on Fox, Showtime Boxing, couple other entities, yeah.
Out there.
Cumberland Farms gas station in your neighborhood, thank you.
There he is, Brian Campbell. So we appreciate you guys joining us. Of course, at the end of the show, we will get to your questions. Actually, some pretty good ones today. I was very impressed. From Twitter, using the hashtag #TheMMABeat. Keep sending them. We will pick the best ones and answer them live on air. All right, boys, a lot to get to today, so let us do it. First of all, Danny, UFC Stockholm is this weekend. Very, very, very quickly. Do you think people care? Not much, right?
Not much.
I do like the main event, though. So why don't we start there, right?
Yeah, the main event is good, and there's also a few fights here and there that are decent. But
now I'm gonna go to you first, but I want to bring up something he told me before we get on the air. I like the main event, which is Anthony Smith taking on Alexander Gustafsson. But the reason I like it is just as a fight. Yeah. I'm kind of curious to see where Gustafsson is coming off the John Jones loss. At the same time, I'm kind of interested to see where Anthony Smith is coming off the John Jones loss. We had him on the show on Monday. I thought both had some kind of interesting things to say about where they're going. Both of them treating this fight as a very selfish endeavor, and that's commonly true for a fight, but like especially true in this particular case. So you heard my plea about why I like it. He hates this fight. Yeah. I think it makes no sense. He says it has no narrative.
Don't steal my thunder.
Hold on. I'm not going to give it away. It has no purpose. Where are you?
I feel like I'm a little bit in the middle. I think from a styles point and just from a sporting point, I think the fight's going to be good. I think after listening to both those interviews on the MMA Hour, I was like, okay, wow, I'm a lot more interested in that fight than I was before. Yep. And stylistically, they both match up pretty well. So I'm curious to see, how that looks, once they step in the octagon. But as far as if you're trying to groom a division, if you're trying to set up interesting matchups, if you're trying to set up guys in a way that they can have paths back to the title, this is not it. And I'm sure you'll probably elaborate a little bit more on that. But both guys are coming off a loss against John Jones. They recently fought for the title because John Jones is being pretty active. A win, I feel like it hurts more to lose, and there's not really much to gain for a win here other than, look, I got to win, and that's it. But whoever wins here is not going to get a title shot immediately. They still have a long way to go.
You nailed it. There's nothing to win. I love you, by the way, in the red and black lumberjack. Just need the hat to match. Ultimately, look, it's like a quasi-loser leaves town in terms of the title picture. A win doesn't get any of them closer to a title shot because they both just lost to John Jones. And this is an interesting division right now when you look at 205. You got the greatest fighter of all time at the top. You have somewhat of a hollow cupboard below where you don't have names. You got a couple of guys who may be next when you're looking at a Johnny Walker weirdo or maybe even Dom Reyes if he can put things back on the track. But ultimately, I don't understand the sacrificing one of these two names in this matchup. Certainly, if you're going to get Gustafsson in Stockholm, Sweden in his backyard,
what are you sacrificing?
Smith is a sellable B-side with that. But here's what you're sacrificing, okay?
Names.
Jones isn't going to heavyweight like I think he should. He seems like he wants to just stay busy, cash them checks, pick apart the Thiago Santos one by one.
Guys.
So my point on it is this. You want to find out if those other guys are for real? I don't want a division where all the young names who may have next are just waiting in line for their John Jones cash out. I want to find out if they're real. I want Anthony Smith against a Dom Reyes or a Johnny Walker. Not necessarily both against each other.
Hold on. Why don't you think we can all agree it might be a fun fight. I think even on that level.
Let's not get it wrong. This fight is fun. I want to see it from that standpoint. I'm just saying it's questionable matchmaking. I'm not saying I hate it.
I think you make some great points about the matchmaking. I take them seriously. But the part I'm a little bit confused about, I'm not sure that I follow, is that this is not a test of either guy. I would humbly submit it's a very clear and important test of either guy.
I mean, someone's got to lose. So
it's more than that. If you're Smith and you beat Gustafsson, holy S. The Volkan Oezdemir win is important, but he's been part of a long losing streak. So you can, if you wanted to be a critic, you could do it in that way.
Exactly.
This would be categorically the best win of his career by a million miles. If you lose, he kind of goes back to a bit of a different space. If you're Gustafsson and you win, first of all, you get, I think there's been some questions about where his headspace is. He gets answers some of those. And if he loses, whoa, dude, that is a monumental shift at the top of that division. Tell me why that doesn't matter.
What I say that there's no winner is, neither of these guys are going to take a victory and go right back in line and get close to fighting Jones again. And when you are in a division where you don't have a deep pool of names, these two are strong B-sides. Gustafsson will be an A-side because of his name, but strong B-sides from the idea of let's find out if somebody else is for real and let's use this name commercially to sell the fight and use this name as a test to get them over the hump to set them up to fight John Jones. Now you're essentially giving one of these guys 2 losses in a row. And I think for Anthony Smith, considering he was so honest and saying, I didn't want this fight. I wanted to take some time off. I lost 5 hard rounds to John Jones, in which I took a beating and maybe didn't show my best foot forward in terms of strategy or mindset. Now he's coming back, turning it around quickly into a fight he doesn't want. And I heard his comments on your show where you like the refreshingness, but he's basically saying, I'm not thinking about a victory. I don't care about a loss. I'm just going to go out there and fight and punch and kick. I feel like he's being set up to be sent back in the other direction toward those 13 losses that he has on his record. It's just sort of like, why are we doing this fight right now?
Yeah.
As Brian said, these two guys are really strong B-sides. Obviously, you can probably put Gustafsson, in an A-side, but ultimately, what you want from a matchmaking standpoint is to start catapulting guys and making them visible and making their brand stronger, and also just showing skills-wise, look, this could be a serious threat to John Jones. If Anthony Smith goes in there and destroys Alexander Gustafsson, we're going to go, okay, that Rashad Evans wins, that Shogun Rua win, he is legit. It wasn't any fluke. He's a legit contender. But there's no road back to John Jones, at least for now. Say you would have put Johnny Walker in there and he would have had the same result. All of a sudden, we want to see Johnny Walker versus John Jones. And you can plug in Luke Rockhold against Anthony Smith. They had a nice little back and forth, and people were, wanted to see that matchup. And for some reason, it didn't get booked. Imagine if he beats Anthony Smith. The guy who went 5 rounds with John Jones that not many people are able to do. All of a sudden, you want to see Luke Rockhold versus John Jones. A lot more. I feel like people already want to see it.
They already want to see that. No,
but it would just fuel the fire a lot more. This fight has there's no end in as far as there's no clear picture as far as whoever wins here, we don't know what's next.
Okay, here's what I'm just not buying.
But no, I agree with you that it does, at the end of the day, it does answer some questions. We are going to find out where Anthony Smith, if he's a legit, top 5 light heavyweight. We found out he's not the guy. That guy's John Jones.
Yes.
But with this matchup, we're going to find out if he's a top 5 or not.
Now, understand, I'm not saying it's the perfect fight. I'm not saying it's this was the one that had to get made. That's not what I'm saying. I'm still not buying some of what y'all are selling me here a little bit. We're haggling here at the Turkish market. I guess the thing is this. Number one, we're like, a path back to a title. Guys, they both just lost in title fights.
Yes.
It wouldn't matter who they fought next. That's a long way off.
Okay.
So, secondly, hold on. This is the second point because it's relevant to this. It can't be both. It can't be both that you are admittedly telling me this is a super thin division without names, and also, what's the road back? The answer is you don't need much of a road. What's the road back to a Bellator title? Being present, getting a win or two, and just having your name out there. It's a very similar situation. So I'm not saying look, the winner here, catapults, rockets. Oh, they're going to get. No, I agree with that. It's a little bit of a bit of murky situation, but we don't know when Johnny Walker's coming back, and maybe Dom Reyes doesn't get it done. One more win from these other two guys, especially in the case of Smith, who has not lost twice. Not buying it, fellas. Not buying it.
And I get what you're saying. You can't be half pregnant, but ultimately. Do you lose here if you're UFC and Anthony Gustafsson takes 2 losses in a row?
Anthony Smith.
I'm sorry, Alexander Gustafsson would take 2 losses in a row when he is your second biggest name in this division. Yeah, you're not going to put him in a trilogy anytime soon against John Jones. But again, from the idea of testing those other names, he's your A-side if you want to test him against these other names. Why are you testing him against Anthony Smith, who I mentioned how many losses he has? He's still got to prove that he is an elite fighter, in my opinion. Throwing him back in there against Gustafsson, it just doesn't seem to make a ton of sense unless they're rewarding him for I don't know, not taking a DQ win over John Jones? Is that it?
Let's just drop down to the 145-pound division for a second. Look how they were matchmaking Jose Aldo. I wasn't in favor of Jose Aldo fighting at 145. I wanted to see him at 155. But nonetheless, he was put in matchups where, look, it's a coin flip in the sense of it could go either way. Yes, but at least if a certain outcome happens, you can catapult somebody into, maybe not stardom.
You're talking after the second Holloway fight?
Yeah. For example, he fought Jeremy Stevens.
Right.
And we thought, Jose Aldo might probably win, but if Jeremy Stephens wins, holy, he's up there, and all of a sudden you might want to see Holloway versus Stephens. This is not the same case. Whoever wins here, there's no path back to John Jones, at least for the moment being. And, as Brian noted, these are big names. Gustafsson is flirting with retirement. I mean, he's not sure of where he's at right now in his career. So we don't know if he has a couple fights left in him, one fight left in him, a bunch. We don't know. But at least use the star power that he has, because he does have some star power, and try to build somebody else. Somebody else that hasn't gotten a crack at the title. I feel like that's where Brian is getting at.
Johnny Walker would have been a great choice in this particular case.
How about Luke Rockhold versus Alexander Gustafsson?
I guess he just wasn't ready. I agree. The Luke Rockhold one is so interesting for that division, and especially if also, we'll talk about him later in the show, if Yoel Romero moved up to 205, I think you get a lot of fun.
Yep. I mean, would it have been any different if this main event was Gustafsson and Volkan Ozdemir? To me, you got storylines there. Ozdemir coming on, and I know he's in the co-main event.
You would have preferred that?
Well, how's this storyline? Ozdemir's on a 3-fight losing streak. I know he kind of got screwed in that last fight. If he goes to a 4-fight losing streak, you're basically like, look, that's a fall from grace. He's not that guy. But it also kind of gives Gustafsson in his hometown, in a main event that's going to be decently profiled, to kind of bounce back against a guy on a 3-fight losing skid. It's not going to hurt the UFC that much if Volkan takes it.
I don't think it's a bad fight either. This is when people are like, when news, I've talked to you about this before on the MMA Hour. Like, when news breaks about a fight, people get super excited. To me, I don't think every fight is equivalent. That would be a silly thing to say. But kind of, there are certain situations where one fight is not necessarily all that much worse or better than the other one. I take some of your points. I don't think it was the optimal fight. I also think people are being a little bit too cynical and a little bit too unfair. The guys are coming off of title fight losses. They have a road back to climb, and there's so many uncertainties. Could there have been more clarity somewhere else? Probably, but you do get some here. It's worth investigating.
And I think that those are comments a couple of days after the loss to Jones about taking the fight against his own wishes. I think that fueled some of this argument. At the end of the day, it's going to be a fun fight. I want to see it. Let's see what happens.
It's going to be a good fight, So that's all that matters.
All right, so I know folks love it online when I look at my phone. Here are some of the other fights on this card. Very quickly, I want to see what you guys thought of them. So the main event, of course, is going to be Smith and Gustafsson. Your co-main event, I kind of like this one. Speaking of Volkan Ozdemir, taking on Ilir Latifi. Brian, love or no?
Love. It's going to be action, and you got Volkan who's going to be a little bit desperate there. And look, beefy Latifi bangs, and isn't that his backyard in Sweden?
Beefy Latifi is what you call him.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one, because you got a really crisp striker versus somebody that can wrestle and is just a bulldozer, really powerful.
And fast versus kind of slow, but also explosive, and also both guys coming off of losses. Kind of interesting there as well. Jimmy Manawa taking on Alexander Rakic. If you guys do not know who Alexander Rakic is,
that's going to be a banger.
I have a feeling you're about to find out. I've been watching this guy for a while. He was a little bit unrefined when I first saw him, kind of sticking to some more fight control tactics, a lot of takedowns and then sort of top control. He is a physical specimen at that weight class.
From Austria, looks like
Super
he
tough.
could be somebody.
Trains at ATT.
KO power.
I'm telling you.
And that's why it's good matchmaking, because Jimmy Manuel is open and he's saying, look, I'd take losses if it means I can put out fun fights.
So and also, he's pushing 42, so this is a much better rising guy, maybe a guy who's a little bit on the back end of his career. Makwan Amirkhani taking on Chris Fishgold. I can never get over. They keep putting Chris Fishgold on all these UFC Mars, UFC Saturn's moons, or whatever. Damir Hadzovic taking on Christos Giagos, and then Daniel Teemer taking on a donk I can't name. Lastly, a couple other ones I wanted to sort of note here. Nick Hine versus Frank Camacho on the prelim. Yeah. Brain cells will be destroyed in that one. Stevie Ray taking on Leonardo Santos. Dude, Leonardo Santos. Folks forget he beat Kevin Lee striking fast years ago. Has kind of just been on the shelf. Also, it's the Jiu-Jitsu World Championships this week, and he is a legit black belt. And then lastly, Tanya Evinger taking on Lena Landsberg. Did I miss anything of note?
I like the story behind Judah Santana, the 3-0 women's featherweight, who's going to be taking on Bad News Barbie there, who's 2-0. I forgot her last name. Judah's got an interesting backstory. I read a nice little MMA junkie profile on her, where battled some substance abuse issues in her teenage years, started her career, but then had to shelf it because of pregnancy, was supposed to debut on the Brazilian Dana White series and couldn't get a visa. She's hungry.
All right, very good. All right, let's take it to the next story. Now, we had, I spoke to Urijah Faber a couple of weeks ago, and then it came out just a short time after that he was unretiring. He is going to return to action. UFC Sacramento, I believe, July 13th. This will be on ESPN+, which means virtually no one is going to pay attention. And he will be, I think it's a co-main event role, certainly a main card slot.
Yeah.
and he's going to be back in the bantamweight division. He's been gone for about 3 years, I think 2.5, something along those lines. He spoke to Dan Hardy, saying, he retired on his own because he wanted to. He retired off a win over Brad Pickett in Sacramento, so it wasn't like on some terrible losing streak. But he made some other comments, Brian, that I thought were kind of interesting. Here's my view on it. Am I moved by a Urijah Faber versus Ricky Simón bout? No. And as some folks were upset about, they should have done BJ Penn. I don't know why people want BJ Penn to just get annihilated. I don't know what this thirst is for this. I like it for Urijah because Ricky Simón has a very active workman-like style, but not necessarily, I don't want to say, not much of a threat to stop a fight, at least against a veteran like that who's still pretty skilled. But it didn't really move me. I don't really feel anything about it. I'm not mad at the guy. I do think he's taking care of his health.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. But, am I super psyched that he's back in this particular fight? No, not really. Where are you on this?
I don't mean to start off the show with the back-to-back arguments where I'm sort of pinpoint critiquing UFC matchmaking as if I'm some closet booker. When it really matters, it doesn't. But
also, it's a weird conversation to have. The fight is what the fight is.
Yeah, but my stance ultimately, whether you're talking about Anderson Silva or any of the aging names, is if you're going to allow them to keep fighting and they're still credible, use their names for good. Now, you can argue they are. You can argue they've got Ricky Simón and say, look, on a nice little run here, maybe Urijah Faber can give him that rub. I sort of, from my standpoint, love the idea of putting aging legends in with other aging legends. BJ Penn is maybe the wrong argument, but the spirit of the BJ Penn conversation is not wrong. Because in this case, Simón loses. You just stunted his growth for what? Faber, you're not considering a title contender unless you're going to match something creatively, like if a Dom Cruz or a Dillashaw ran into a belt and you're trying to sort of build a storyline off of history or something. If not, he's just fighting because he still can, because he still wants to. I don't love the idea when you're doing Anderson Silva against a Derek Brunson, against a Jared Cannonier, where you're like, storyline-wise, this is going nowhere. Seems like a waste of his name. I get you're putting Faber in Sacramento. That should sell tickets. But you're making that the co-main event. You're using a main event. Jermaine Durandamy, right? Which doesn't seem like a main event at all, even with Aspen Ladd being from that area.
It's a fine fight. It's a terrible main event.
Love the matchup. Terrible main event. I don't get promotion selling tickets-wise why you wouldn't just put Faber in Sacramento in a main event against another aging name, a Cub Swanson, go up and down the road, whoever you want. You can get, the 5-round argument. Again, not every main event has to be 5 rounds.
What do you think, Danny?
I understand where you're coming from, but I also think there's a space for young guys to fight legends. Anderson Silva, Israel Adesanya, I thought that was, perfect matchmaking. And look what it did to Israel Adesanya. It just boosted his profile by a lot. So I like Ricky Simón. I feel like in some sort of way, he actually kind of looks like he would be part of Team Alpha Male. Like he has that style.
That's true.
But yeah, I like that fight. I think he's super legit. He's got an awesome mullet as well.
Yeah, he has the best mullet I've ever
in
seen.
MMA, for sure.
Since Mike Pyle, at least.
Yeah,
but he's got a better mullet than Mike Pyle.
It's so long. But anyways, I think this is a fine. I think this is a fine fight, and I don't have any problems with him coming back. I'm actually pretty.
Are you excited?
I'm excited. I'm excited
really?
to see California Kid fight in Sacramento and see what he looks like. Because look, Urijah Faber. When we talk about the smartest fighters of all time, we always talk about GSP, but I feel like Urijah Faber is often left out. The guy left as a top 5 bantamweight. He left, on a win in his hometown. He has one of the most recognized teams in MMA, author, successful businessman, etc. Takes pretty good care of his health, He's never been knocked out or anything like that. I think if anything, this break might have actually extended his career. It might have been actually a good thing. And he actually left when he was supposed to. So I'm excited to see what he looks like.
Renan Barão beat him twice.
Yeah, decision and TKO.
TKO, but he had the thumbs up, remember, and Herb didn't see it.
He was fishing. Right. He was trying to get a takedown. I believe a single, if I remember correctly. So I'm actually curious to see what he looks like at 135.
The curiosity factor is fine. The whole question is this the right matchup? And again,
I think it is.
In the end, doesn't really matter. No,
because look,
I don't think that's the only.
If Ricky Simón wins, like Urijah Faber in your resume, that's pretty darn good, man.
It's great for Ricky Simón. I'm happy for them. But I don't know. It doesn't move me. I don't feel anything. Like when they announced Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar, which I realize is a very different scenario for a lot of different reasons, I'm just simply saying
that's a world title fight.
100%. It's not the same. It's apples to oranges in many, many capacities. And there was a debate about should have been Volkanovski versus Edgar. But at the end of the day, I was like, oh, God, I cannot wait to see that fight. There's nothing, there's no there with this one. Like, I'm not mad at Urijah Faber for coming back for all the reasons you mentioned. Good ambassador for the sport, taking care of his health, not at some kind of tremendous knockout risk in this fight.
Has been active.
Fine, no problem. Go do what you want to do. The UFC wants it back, by the way. They tried to get Cody Garbrandt on this card. They couldn't, so they pulled him deep into the bag of tricks. Credit to the UFC for fine. All that stuff's fine. But like as a fan speaking, is this a fight I care about? No, it is not. It is not a fight I even remotely care about. And while the matchmaking I gather could have been different, we can always have these questions. I'm more trying to get a sense of like how the fan base feels about it. Also, he's pushing 40.
Yeah.
And you're right, he is a smart fighter, smart businessman, smart guy. At the same time, the knock on him when he retired was, and I believe largely fair, no fighter's perfect, is that he didn't really adapt over time. He was sort of rejecting what the best practices that Dwayne Ludwig had brought to Team Alpha Male. You know, he beat Dominic Cruz the first time, then lost, then they rematched at UFC 199, I think, somewhere around there, 198. 198. And it wasn't even close. Like, it was just, he got lapped. And so I don't see how time off fixes that. I don't know that Ricky Simone's got to take advantage of it. I guess we'll see. But I don't know. For me, it just feels
I'm
a little lifeless.
I'm more interested in UFC Sacramento now that Urijah Faber's on that card than before.
I would say that's fine. Everyone's mileage will vary. I would say for me, quite modestly.
And also, he's been off and he's been working a lot on his jiu-jitsu. We don't know if he's adapted.
You watch his match with Nicky Ryan?
I didn't. But Nicky Ryan is Nicky Ryan.
Okay, but it wasn't close. Like, it wasn't close for 30 seconds. I'm not sure what to say.
You ever wonder if history would have been different had Faber gotten that McGregor match at 196 after RDA pulled out instead of Nate Diaz? Because Faber will tell you it came down to the two of them, and it was Conor's choice.
Yeah. You know what's funny? On the Dan Hardy podcast, he said that Conor was telling him to go after TJ. That catches my interest a little bit more. Yeah. That I would be like, ooh, okay.
Look, what if Urijah Faber pulls off a Shogun Rua and just extends his career by fighting once a year? Because I do feel like once you're older, your activity level should be a lot lower if you want to keep on fighting.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years can go by pretty quick, and it's not just 2 years for TJ Dillashaw, because like it's 2 years until he can fight. Right. He can start training camp before that. Yeah. I don't know. It's not far-fetched.
I would say this.
He gets 2 fights in, maybe?
Again, listen to what I'm saying. Not saying he can't be competitive, but I have reasons for skepticism. I don't think the Ricky Simone fight tells us a lot, unless he wins like dramatically, and even then it'd be like a little bit.
I think it does. He's 26, young guy, pretty well-rounded.
What's Ricky Simone's best win? Right. So,
still though, I mean, we're gonna who would you rather have Faber fight then on that card?
An old guy with a name.
Rather than BJ Penn here, Campbell's suggestion.
The BJ Penn idea, I can't believe people are like BJ Penn should fight Francis Ngannou. I'm like, what is wrong with y'all?
It should be a Frankie Edgar type. I know they already fought and Edgar has a title shot, but it should be a Frankie Edgar type.
The Cub Swanson idea is super interesting. I kind of like that one a lot.
Good WEC throwback.
Because you could have Faber coming up a little bit. The loss, how much does it mean exactly? I don't know, but I don't.
Somebody get Miguel Torres up in the bullpen, right?
Yeah.
Oh, God. All right, so let's do this one. Let's go to the next story, which is kind of interesting. Yoel Romero has...
Yoel Dinero.
Did you see that online? You should just come up with that.
I saw it online.
Oh, that is such a good one. Yoel Dinero Romero is... Well, we don't say. So, however long ago, I can't remember the dates at this point anymore, but he was flagged by USADA for a potential violation.
2015.
2015 is what it was? Yeah. And so it turns out that in the end, he gets, this is what I love, Yoel Romero drives the critics crazy because he is a walking embodiment of someone who just destroys all their arguments about advantages and which ones we tolerate. The guy has been tested at a higher level, for whatever that's worth, longer than any other UFC athlete.
Like he was like 15 somewhere.
Yeah, by the way, his physique has not changed at all, and there's been no swings in it whatsoever. And the one time he has an issue, he gets exonerated essentially by USADA. They still give him the 6 months for a strict liability violation, but they basically says he did not cheat. That has to eat his critics alive.
I mean, for them it doesn't matter because they just saw the headline, Yoel Romero potential, violation.
And the best part is they're like,
that's all they see. That's all they need.
They're like, how can a 42-year-old man move like that? Guys, it's called unbelievable genetics. You see the guys out of Cuba all the time. You tolerate that.
You don't even need to go to Cuba. Just go to Miami.
Yeah, Miami. You guys think that's only possible with PEDs. This is the incoherency. I've been trying to explain to you guys about what advantages you tolerate and don't. Different conversation for a different time. Here's what did happen, Brian. He got popped for this. And while he was exonerated in the end by USADA, He sued the company, I think called Gold Star Labs or whatever.
Yeah.
Some fly-by-night operation.
Sounds like an adult men's club. Or something.
It really does. Did you go to their website?
No.
I actually went to their website and looked at their products. It's the standard stuff. BCAAs, creatine monohydrate, CLA, that kind of thing.
A little bit of
Yeah, a little bit of crack sprinkled on top. And he sued them, and he won. Now, here's the deal. He wins $27.5 million, although there might be multiples of that, depending on who you listen to. You know he sued a real above-board company because they didn't even respond to the lawsuit or show up. So he won essentially in absentia. And again, I don't think he's going to get any of this money because I don't think Gold Star on their best day had $1 million, much less $27 million. He might drive them into bankruptcy. So what is
might?
Yeah, okay, assuredly will. What is the upside for Yoel? What does this event actually do for him in the end?
Clear his name.
Does it clear his name?
Clears his name.
I'm not sure that it does.
Look, you're always going to have skeptics. You're always going to have skeptics in 2019 that everybody's using. And when you got a body that's a wonderland like that, good Lord. I mean, at that age, I mean, come on. I'm not talking about using my hands, but like that's just absurd. But I think this is somebody who went to bat for himself and won. So it does clear his name. He's able to stand strong with that. Yeah. And you just don't see that today because if you get even a sniff of that, whether you get caught for drugs recreational or not, it just sticks with you. Warren Sapp always said that. Remember the day before the NFL draft and he popped for a weed test and it was...
Well, Warren Sapp is a disaster.
Well, what I'm saying is I remember at the time he was like, this is going to follow me my entire career. You guys will not stop harping on it. It's the first thing I thought about every time I heard Sapp's name throughout his whole career. To be able to turn back and erase that is strong, especially for a guy who still has it at this age, is still a contender, is still a factor, and wants to remove that in such a muddled climate of which side you're on in the drug test battle. I'm sure Professor Luke over here has got a long spiel you're going to become about how this exposes the drug testing system or how we should all juice along with them. I'm not really sure.
I advocate neither of these positions, but go ahead.
Yeah, but it seems like a victory.
Yeah, it's
Danny,
a victory.
Is it a real victory, or are we just saying it's a victory?
Nah, it is. It is. I think the trolls will always be there no matter what. I think even if he never tested positive for anything, the trolls are always going to be there. And even with this, but nonetheless, it's another layer of like, look, F you, I was clean. You know what I'm saying? Because if the court wouldn't have decided for Yoel Romero if it wasn't true. So this is again another victory for Yoel Romero. And I think on talking to ESPN, he said it himself. Like, I'm sick of the soldier of steroids comments and all this stuff. Like this in a way, like it's more important than just the money. Like, look, guys, I'm clean.
Yeah, it wasn't about the money, and I respect that.
You got to respect.
I'm a little bit skeptical it will radically.
Not radically, but it's got to do something. At least, look, if you're an intelligent human being, you see that and you go, oh, right. Yes.
Yeah, but most people are not.
Okay, well, whose opinion do you value?
Almost no one's.
All right. Next.
No, I guess I'm just trying to think this through. Like, I'm just trying to wrestle with the idea, like, if you get popped and then USADA comes back and says, okay, you didn't cheat, you could have been a little more careful, but you didn't cheat. And then you sue a company and then you win a judgment for a huge amount of like money. In the end, I guess what I'm really trying to ascertain is, what does that do for the fighter or the athlete who did that? What is the real measurable benefit? Because we can probably all agree the money is not going to be there in most cases unless it's some kind of really.
It's a moral victory, is where you're going with it.
It's a moral victory, but I guess what I'm trying to say is,
it cleans his name a bit.
Does it meaningfully change opinions of critics? And I'm not talking about trolls, critics. Does this move the needle on critics? And should, Danny, other fighters do it? We know, for example, Lyman Good is trying. He hasn't. I think it's still unresolved. Is this a model that other athletes should follow?
For sure, because it does clear your name, up to some degree, right? Maybe not completely, but trolls are going to troll, right? But it does clear your name, and second, look, you might get some money out of it. So, and you did get screwed over by, ruining your reputation.
Why didn't USADA clear his name? Like, what does this do to clear his name?
Why didn't USADA?
No, in other words, USADA comes out and says, this guy was the victim of a tainted supplement. He could have been more careful, but he didn't cheat.
Yeah.
How does this change? Like, why isn't what they said enough?
Oh, well, this is just, it should be enough because, you have USADA who's overseeing all of this and they're the governing body of this. It should be enough. But, people have lost some trust with USADA depending, on certain situations. So, once one thing's put into question, a lot of things are put into question. But this is just another layer of taking that even farther.
I think what he's saying is there's a cynical assumption as fans that if you get cleared by USADA, it doesn't mean you were really cleared, right?
I don't understand that at all. Like, oh, they're the adults in the room, except when they're not. And I can't find, it just feels so arbitrary when the fans decide that they're doing their job or not. Like, it goes back to the John Jones thing, or even the Paulo Costa, offering substantial assistance. Oh, that is a terrible thing. Guys, that is how they do their very best work. The testing is not how they catch people. Well, okay, they catch donks that way. But like the big fish, it's all from investigations, and it's all from people providing them information to that effect. Now, what those guys provide in this particular case or any other, your guess is as good as mine, but like people have decided this is disreputable. How is it disreputable to do the act that enables this institution that I am told is necessary for combat sports unless there's Bellator or one, which is another incoherency in everyone's position around this. But I'm serious, like, I guess I'm just a little bit, I feel happy for Yoel because I saw the smile on his face with his agent. They were like arm in arm. It clearly mattered to him. Yeah. And I guess in the end,
well, it calls everything he's accomplished in question, and there are certain pride in an athlete. Sometimes you just give up that pride. You're like, I can't please anybody. I don't care. Right. But I think for him, that pride was very, very important. For
it's also just kind of a wake-up call as well. Like, I don't know what kind of money Yoel makes, but he typically makes a little bit better. He's been in some headlining slots.
Championship bouts.
Like, you need some money to clear your name a little bit, which is a bit of an unfortunate situation.
Is it a wake-up call for these providers of supplements who just sort of add things in and don't put them on the label?
No, this will keep happening. Here's what I would say. Unless there's, my hunch, because this is not the first time it's happened. This happened in NFL. It's happened in Major League Baseball. My hunch is that unless athletes really started to hammer them, and there was like a turnkey way where like Danny pops but gets cleared, and then there, how there's like ambulance chasers? If there was like an ambulance chaser for athletes when it came to contaminated supplements, where they could pick up your case, file it, and then just push it through. If there was a way to do that, and there was this avalanche of response. If
it became more of a reoccurring thing, common thing.
Yeah, like very frequent. Like you knew if they popped, we're going to get sued, you might get something. But until then, a lot of these athletes are like, I don't have the money. What's the point? I don't really care. Like, I'm back fighting. Who else popped? Dirty Bird, Tim Means.
Tim Means, yeah.
Is he suing the company that did it to him?
Well, not everybody can afford to go down that road.
This is my point. Like, there's a financial barrier to name clearing that just seems a little bit unfortunate.
I'd do a cycle of TRT in a second to be able to grow an actually manly beard.
Yeah, you're stuck. Your beard is it is trash, unfortunately.
I do like Danny's "We Will Rock You" mustache, though. Again, I got to point that out.
The bigote is legitimate.
Very Prime Mercury. I love it.
Thicker than yours.
Well, that's why I'm willing to go under. That's why I'm willing to get the injection right in the cheekbone.
All right, let's go to the next story if we can. Max Holloway did some media tours in Canada. Max, the great Hawaiian who loves Canada for reasons that remain unclear.
10th Island, baby.
10th Island. I think that was Vegas, so that's 9th Island. So I guess Canada's 10th Island. In any event, he was there this week, of course, to promote his fight at UFC 240, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, opposite Frankie Edgar. And while he's there, he spoke to the media, I think Aaron Bronstetter and some other ones out there. And he basically made the argument, Danny, that, okay, so things didn't go great against Poirier. He was the better man that night. He gave him all the credit in the world. But he says, you know what, I'm still in the mix at 155. Now, I looked at the top of that division. You've got Khabib at the top. Then I'm not saying this is the exact order, but it's something like this. Then you've got Poirier. Then you've got Conor, Tony. You've got Cowboy. You've got Edson. You've got Al Iaquinta. Is Max Holloway in the mix with those guys?
I think so. I mean, he fought Poirier, a super tough guy, probably the second best lightweight there, right? I mean, you can make an argument for that. But he fought somebody that's super legit, and also he didn't get much time to acclimate to the division. So when he does get another chance, because as I said it a million times on this show, his days at 145 are numbered. He can easily jump back in there and fight anybody, and if he does the process right, I think he can compete with most guys. I mean, he went...
Tell me who he beats at those names I mentioned. Edson Barboza, Iaquinta, Cerrone, Poirier.
For example, I don't want to single out fighters, but for example, I like his chances against Iaquinta.
Okay.
Edson Barboza could be interesting.
Okay. These are 6 and 7.
McGregor, that'd be a fun one.
Yeah.
I feel like he could probably beat him.
You like his chances?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and not only that, but if you look at that division, all those guys, Tony Ferguson, 35.
I don't like his chances against Tony.
I don't either. But look, Tony Ferguson, 35. Don Cerrone, 36. McGregor, 30. Iaquinta, 32. I mean, you name it. All those guys are in their 30s or mid-30s. Max Holloway's 27. Say he sticks another year or two at featherweight at most, right? All those guys are not going to be in their prime anymore. So this conversation would be a lot different.
Well, it's his fighting odometer, 27 years old, though. I think that's where the...
I mean, he's also Hawaiian, and he's super tough. I mean, when was the last time he got stopped?
So you got a good point there. I don't understand his comments. A couple of things that there were some holes in them. One of them saying, I think it's a clearer and quicker path to a title at 155. Hey, Max, 155 is historically deep right now. It's a carnival.
It has had an exodus, though. Pettis has moved on. Lee has moved on. Dos Anjos has moved on.
Even with those, it's insanely deep right now. And it's still insanely muddled from the idea of people that are deserving Tony Ferguson getting another title shot right now. But here's my point. What I saw in that Max Poirier fight, look, I saw one of the fights of the year. I saw Max fight his heart out as he always does and never stop trying to win that fight. But if we're going to use that fight as a comparison of how Max would deal against these super elites, and by the way, lightweight's full of super elites, I think I saw a power and size gap that works against his style. That yes, he would be able to compete in that top 10. There's certainly guys he would be able to outwork and outlast and maybe stop in terms of exhaustion and accumulation. But I don't see him as a championship player as that division is currently constructed right now, where it would be smart to throw his hat in there when you are the champion at featherweight right now. You finally got a couple names that are worth fighting that you can make big fights against, that you'd be favored to beat them all.
Let me ask you this. Did you see Poirier's championship material once he left 145 and went up to 155?
Well, he had to reinvent himself.
Max Holloway can do the same thing. He's still young, and there is a process that you got to go through.
He didn't say he had to reinvent himself. He said he was in the mix for a title. In the mix.
Well, just out of name value, we have to assume that that's true. Also,
your argument is name value alone,
Conor McGregor, that's true. But we're speaking of this as if they were to fight right now. The dude still has a fight with Frankie Edgar. Again, all these guys are in their 30s. This division was going to look a lot different in a year or two from now. So,
Here's what I would say. I agree with you. Dustin Poirier, did you guys hear what he had to say on the Food Truck Diaries?
I saw part of it. I didn't see it.
So about the Holloway fight, what he basically said was he was really happy with the effort. He said he was surprised at media reaction afterward being strictly about the power. He goes, to me, I won that fight because of smarts and I found tiny openings.
His accuracy was amazing.
And I was like, there's no doubt that Dustin is right about that. On the other hand, in fairness to the media reaction, I looked at the numbers. Do you guys realize that numerically, Max Holloway outstruck him? Max Holloway landed more on Dustin in terms of a numbers standpoint than the other way around, which is crazy to think about because Max would touch him and, it would have an effect. And then Dustin would touch him and his whole body would move. I mean, it was ridiculous. That's why I think they focused on it. So someone made a point to me, if he's going to go back up, probably take some time, don't just do your normal life and then cut 10 less pounds, bulk up a little bit so to get right at the weight class. I would say, to go the distance with him, look, Alvarez couldn't do that twice. Gaethje couldn't do that twice. Yep. Max did it. On the other hand, he got brutally beaten doing it. So I like the idea of a Max Holloway versus an Al Iaquinta, or a Max Holloway versus, more especially, an Edson Barboza.
See, I like the idea out of necessity. If it becomes clear that he 100% cannot make this weight consistently and it's not healthy for him to do so, move up. If the idea is only on financials and you're like, we can give you a Conor fight, we can give you a Khabib fight after Khabib beats the other killers in front of him, then marketing-wise, you're going to make that fight. But unless he's going to commit to moving up and, like you said, restructuring his body, I think he has a style that against the very elites will lead to him accumulating a lot of damage.
Yeah, I think so too. My point being is this. I think I'll split the difference between the both of you. I think Danny's right that based on name value, that fact that he is, as we speak today, still a champion, you kind of have to take that seriously, so I do. However, the physical nature and the way in which he lost against Dustin also makes me think taking a bit of a step back, not a huge one, a little one. That's why I like the 6'7" spot, Iaquinta, Barboza. That is where, let's fight those guys, or one of the two. You look good against them. Hey, now we're cooking with gas.
And that's all part of, getting acclimated and doing a proper move to 155. You don't want to fight the top dog right away. You want to ease your way into that division. And obviously, the top 10 is still a tough ask, but nonetheless, it's not fighting the number 2 guy.
It's crazy to me that some of those guys can leave the division and you're still talking about these names at the top. That division is...
One more thing, though. I didn't like the spirit of Max's comments. That's largely what I'm responding to. And when I say that is, I don't think he deserved an interim title shot at a time when that division was historically loaded and you had people who were insanely deserving. You can argue with me, Tony wasn't ready and all that stuff. I get it. But still, they plugged him in at a time I didn't think it made any sense. So for him to throw out the comments now that I'm still in that mix, I still want another title shot, it's like, you kind of just got humbled. Go back to 45 and own that kingdom until you can't make that weight anymore.
Yeah, that's the other part. Like, what happens if he loses against Edgar? All of this talk at 55, unless he has some kind of weight cut related problem, all of this talk then goes away. So perhaps he did get a little bit ahead of himself on that one. I guess only time will tell. Another issue, this was funny to me. I was caught off guard on this one a little bit, which was, I have noticed something. So this week, Bellator announced that it wasn't going to be Sonnen versus Machida as their main event for Bellator 222, just up the street at MSG in a couple of weeks here. Wow, it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
I still haven't applied for credentials. Sorry, Bellator, I'll do it. I apologize.
I got to do that too.
I completely forgot. All right, so here's the deal, though. They instead put Rory versus Neiman Gracie, which is your semifinals of the welterweight tournament, as well as a consequence, a title fight as the main event. Now, I didn't see a lot of belly aching about it, but here's what I did see. On our show on Monday, someone wrote or called and said, isn't it weird that you've got for UFC 238, you got these two title fights, but Tony and Cerrone are getting all the marketing push? And I thought to myself, no, there's nothing weird about that at all. Mm-hmm. So, Brian, what's the situation here? How should a promoter handle it? Would you have preferred that they just kept Sonnen versus Machida because that's the most marketable one? Or is it better to be like, let's honor our champions, put them at the top, but let's put our advertising resources behind the horses that will take us the furthest? I don't understand the controversy here, but there was some.
I don't think there's any controversy to it. Let's remember when it leaked out, when you first saw the reports that you were going to get Sonnen Machida at MSG, we didn't know who was coming out of that Rory-John Fitch fight. And if you're Bellator, there's no chance, under any circumstance, you're putting John Fitch and Neiman Gracie in the main event of a tentpole card like this. So I think announcing the Chael, who brings in the fans, obviously, that fight, and then you have the situation where Rory advances, you go, okay, well, look, we're not going to do a 5-round co-main event title fight when we have Rory, who is the biggest pickup in our promotion's history in terms of getting a guy in his prime. So I think doing the last-minute switcheroo might not look the best, but who cares in the end? It really doesn't matter who's going to go on last, but I think it would be smart, if I had a choice, to put the title fight on last because it means so much for that tournament. It means so much for a title defense. And then you have the added thing of, is Rory ever going to be the same? And that whole, I think you got enough to drive that where it makes it a smart decision. And I don't think debating it, what are you debating here?
Also, I don't think it was only a question of, we don't know who's going to come out between, Rory and McDonald. McDonald and Fitch. But also, those two fight cards were, 6-7 weeks apart? So you don't want to start promoting, your main event as, look, this is the championship bout, and then have one of those guys come out injured, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, we're just going to bump this one. All of a sudden there's no more main event. So I think they did the right choice in, keeping Machida and Sonnen as the main event. And then as soon as, that got figured out, they bumped it. And at the end of the day, this is a title fight. It should, they should honor the champions. And also, not only from honor, but Bellator should start, and not start, but because I think they already do, but they should try to push to value their titles a lot more. And I think when you put it in a co-main event with two former UFC guys, in a way you're sending a message to the fans. What is more important? Either our name value for these guys that made their name in another promotion, or our actual world title. And I think that's what they're doing here. And I think it was the right call.
Here's my view.
Look, at the end of the day, the fights are still going to happen.
Exactly.
So
here's my view. I don't care what method they go through. I think the only weird one would be, let's have Rory versus Neiman at the top, Sonnen and Machida as your co-main, and then putting your marketing efforts behind Rory and Neiman. Yeah. And folks will be like, well, don't you want to promote your champions? To a degree, that's where you can do some of the promotional assets like pre-fight, countdown shows or whatever. But in terms of your advertising dollars, why would you not promote Chael Sonnen? And also, if you're Chael Sonnen, boy, you got your hands full with media obligations because Neiman and Rory ain't going to carry it for you. I had Neiman in the studio. No, don't get me wrong. These are great people, but not everybody is great at doing media. It's just a reality of the business. Chael Sonnen is, so he's got a heavy load there. I'll be honest about this, though. I've come around a little bit. I'm of the belief that, I have zero issue putting title fights and then marketing effort fights below it. No problem, fine. I will sleep just fine. On the other hand, if they did the other way, I wouldn't really care either.
Yeah,
when you've got executives on deposition saying, yeah, the titles don't mean anything, it's just a trophy we give to the best fighter that night, why am I supposed to dignify their title? Why is it my responsibility then to say, oh, no, we must treat this with the with the as sacrosanct as it is. No, you just said under oath that this is a trophy and it doesn't mean anything. Fine. Put it on the card where it deserves to be, which may or may not be at the top.
Yeah, I think in the end, I don't think it's a battle worth arguing. I thought it was refreshing that they would put Rory in the main event and give the title value, and I think it's a right move. But if you want to flip the script and talk about June 8th, UFC 238, I would rather UFC go, look, Ferguson is the biggest story on this card. We're making that the main event, and it's going to be 5 rounds. And these other great title fights are now appetizers with that. And if they went in that direction, and I kind of wish they would go in that direction, because it's the fight people care about the most. It's probably the fight you should put on last.
It's also the most important one on the card. You can talk champ all you want. That's not a fight that should be made. I think Marlon Moraes is the most deserving bantamweight contender that there is going right now, no doubt about it. But Henry Cejudo, under no terms, deserves this fight. I'm sorry, nothing against him, but the TJ one, whatever. This is not the TJ Redux, so I don't agree with it. And on top of it, you've got Tony Ferguson, the most interesting fighter on that card, who's been gone, who's had these personal struggles. He just happens to be fighting the winningest UFC fighter of all time.
Who is a main event brand.
That's
no question about it.
You know what I mean? It's like, are you kidding me? Why would that not be the main event? Oh, no disrespect to Valentina Shevchenko. She's probably going to, I don't know what's going to happen, but if past is prologue, she's probably going to blow through Jessica Ai. So where does that leave you? It leaves you in a space where, again, if they wanted to defend the titles, that's fine. But under deposition, it's not what y'all are telling us about the value of these things. So I just want to point that out here a little bit. All right, so here's something that's kind of interesting about UFC's weird choices. Let's talk about Elias Theodorou for a second, who has finally made his return to social media. And I know it has to be hard for him, man. You lose your job like that. Went 8-3 in the promotion. Was on a 3-1 win streak in his last 4. Did lose his last one to Derek Brunson. Came off of the Tough Nations show back when he was like 25 or 26. And they cut him. They cut him coming off of a loss. I guess the rule is if you're coming off of a loss, they can legally do it even if you have fights left on your your contract. I don't know if he was at the end of it or not, but because I reached out to him, I didn't hear back. But in any case, they let him go, Danny. So let's sort of dig into this a little bit. We touched on it on Monday's show, but we've had some time to think about it. He got out there and was saying on social media, he goes, I thought it was my job to outsmart my opponents and present a difficult challenge for them, and that's what I did. And if that's how he sees his job, then he's right. The problem is, I don't think your employer sees your job that way. True or false?
100% true. I mean, if that wasn't true, he'd still have his job, I believe. And that's what it came down to. It came down to exciting because I know that on the MMA Hour we touched on him, no longer being this young prospect, kind of just being, I'm trying to be, not trying to throw a knock on Theodore, but being sort of a finished product. Like he is who he is at this point. But at the end of the day, even if another fighter was in the same position, but he was exciting, I'm sure they would have, he would have stuck around. There is a value to maybe not being the best, but within the top 10, within the top 15, those guys that are not on the come up, but just kind of linger in that space. I think there is a value to that because they serve as a measuring stick. They serve as a measuring stick for fighters that are dropping off, for prospects that are coming up. So I think that's very important, and I think the UFC values that. But it came down to, look, his fights just weren't all that exciting, and at the end of the day, it's an entertainment sport, and that's what the UFC is trying to do.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's business. Fights, it's not personal. It's not really a sport. It's an entertainment product in the end. So it's a heartbreaking cut if you look at the fairness of things, but so is a heartbreaking cut in the corporate world when somebody maybe gets promoted a little bit higher than their worth actually is, and they're still a contributor, but they go, you know what, that salary, sorry, we're going to have to cut ties with you. And I'm not necessarily trying to make that argument that he's a veteran, he makes more.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you defending ghoulish corporate America practices?
And it's easier for UFC to say, well, we can get a younger, more exciting fighter and pay him a lot less. And maybe that's the truth. I'm just talking more on, in the end, it's an entertainment business. UFC from day one has been about that. Dana White, they give out bonuses for a reason to try to create more exciting matches. Not fair, but it's not like he didn't know this coming in. And look, UFC in the past, if they don't even like you, they can cut you. I mean, it's just the way it is in the end.
So it sounds like, okay, I don't like the UFC's decision. If they had asked me, should we cut him, I would have said no. Sounds like you're saying you would have said yes.
No, I'm saying I'm not surprised. I'm saying it's on brand. I'm saying it's kind of consistent with their ways, whether you hate their ways or not. They'll let somebody with sometimes 4 or 5 losses in a row, if they're an exciting fighter, linger because they make good TV fights. And at the level Theodore was, where he's sort of filling in those middle preliminary card matches, they'd rather have somebody exciting.
It's always a central tension, right? Like you can't just go there and suck forever and then stick around. Well,
Well, you kind of can a little bit.
I mean, a little, yeah.
The values on entertainment
That's
above success. I mean, it's not like we don't know that. So that's why I'm saying it's
right. At some point, you got to get a win. But I think if you're exciting but not so great, your chances of sticking around the UFC are much longer than somebody that's pretty good, pretty decent, and really boring.
Here's the reality about this: like the insulation from that, if you're boring, is if you're really good. Right?
Right.
Because the people are like, oh, the UFC is where the best fight the best. And that actually is a true statement, generally speaking. But if you're not in that part of the UFC where the best are fighting the best, and you're on the bit of the outside where I think we could say Theodore was a good fighter. I mean, 8-3 in the UFC, that's hard to do.
I mean, he was a ranked fighter.
Right? So you're not among the very, very best, but you're certainly a credible, talented fighter. Then the equation changes dramatically. Then it's a question of, okay, well, how good exactly? How entertaining exactly? How expensive exactly? How old exactly? How native to a particular area we are coveting their fan base exactly? And then if you fail enough of those tests by UFC management standards, then the whole thing collapses. You brought up something that I think is really important here. Every time the UFC makes a decision, they kind of tell you who they are. They take the mask off and they reveal it. Dude, it's an entertainment company.
Yep.
It's an entertainment company. It's an entertainment company that happens to house a lot of the very best fighters, and you often get a lot of the very best fights. But at its core, it's what they do, bro. They do entertainment. And if that isn't enough in supply, in addition to the issues I raised on Monday where he was 25 when he got into the company. Okay, you're not super exciting at 25. But at 31, if it's still the kind of same thing, and you've fallen short on those other...
And you're not, if you're not a company man, then and you're not a banger, it's sort of.
Do you think that they were put off by the marijuana advocacy?
That's why I'm saying, like, I don't know if they didn't like him. I don't know the behind the scenes thing there, but it wouldn't have been the first time that they've sort of.
I don't think so.
Company men
they
get
got
rewarded.
Nate Diaz on the roster. Sean O'Malley's out there, doing his thing. I mean,
he's not anti-company.
No, but I'm saying from the marijuana standpoint, as far as advocating for that, I don't think he took it was more towards USADA as far as look, this shouldn't be a banned thing, but I don't think it was a combative standpoint. I think a lot of fighters have voiced that as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a bit of a wake-up call, unfortunately. And can you imagine losing your job and then having to here's the last thing I'll say about this. I remember distinctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, boys. When Jake Shields got cut, I detected much more fan revolt. Even when John Fitch got cut, I detected more fan revolt. Yep. I detected virtually no fan revolt.
Well, there's a difference. Those guys were former title challengers, and they were actually I'm not saying within that mix.
I'm not saying it's apples and oranges, but those guys weren't necessarily all exciting, team one selection.
But they had big names, strong brands. Jake Shields, was coming off from Strikeforce.
I'm not speaking about my personal preference. Yeah. I'm just saying what the general perception was.
Yeah.
I thought when Jake Shields got cut, I was like, what?
Yeah.
No outrage on Brian Caraway getting cut. He's the first fighter to record a takedown on Misha Tate.
Who are you?
Pre-Ronda. I'm in town.
Who are you as a person real? I don't know the answer to that. Let me spend a little. I was going to go into Endeavor going public, which we are going to go into if you want to do your proper under the radar. Let's do under the radar a little bit early, and we'll just put that topic in there. This is where we talk about a story that got a little bit less attention. So Endeavor has gone public. People have asked me what it means. Not sure yet. I'm not sure if anybody knows what it means, to be quite honest with you. And how will it affect the UFC's business, and what does this mean for fighters? I don't know. I don't know what it means. But Brian had a bit of an interesting nugget that I thought was worth a little bit of extra discussion. Brian, why don't you tell us what that is?
Yeah, in the boxing world, the Twitter sphere, the rumor central the past couple of weeks, there's been a discussion going on, things that seem to leak out. You hear the sort of business insiders talk about it. The idea that the PBC, which is a promotion-ish in boxing that has access to more than half, let's say, of the best fighters in the sport, has TV contracts, of course, with Fox and Showtime, may be up for sale, and Endeavor may be looking to purchase it. Now, there is history late last year, I believe it was October, where Endeavor did look into the idea of purchasing Top Rank, which is the boxing promotion Bob Arum that ESPN has an exclusive deal with. So what this would mean for MMA is, look, anytime Dana White gets interviewed and the idea of Zuffa boxing gets breached, he says, look, it's still coming. We still got big plans. And later this year, we're still going to have big news for you. And we all sort of roll our eyes and go, yeah, whatever. But what about this? I don't have inside information here, but these rumors are out there. The idea of, what it could potentially look like if Endeavor got into the boxing space, if they picked up a group of fighters as large as the PBC, and Dana was able to sort of exercise, not his demons, but his long interest in boxing. And obviously we know he built UFC off of the things that boxing wasn't doing, a longtime boxing fan. And if he became the czar of Zuffa boxing and they acquired that many names that are recognizable and essentially tried for the first time to bring a league to the boxing game, it's very interesting.
How expensive would PBC be?
Fairly large, but it's dicey.
$1 billion? Right?
No. It's dicey. What you'd essentially be buying is because it's not a structured league, you'd be buying the managerial share in all the fighters. So it's interesting. It wouldn't be easy. Boxing's a cutthroat sport. You'd have promoters and networks rebelling against that. But no one's ever tried to do the insulated league, try to in some ways create their own title belts, and in some ways try to go against the boxing model and basically make the best fight the best. It always seems like an impossible journey. But as a boxing fan, as a beaten down, hardened, cynical boxing fan, you hear that news. Imagine if Dana White could bring those organizational styles to a boxing promotion. It's interesting.
What is the perception, not of this inevitability or lack thereof, but of Dana White's efforts to be involved in boxing, inside boxing?
I think it'd be welcomed. I think it'd be welcome from the hardened fans.
It's not a laughingstock?
It wouldn't be welcome from the powers that be who are slicing each other's throats at all times to try to get, whatever remaining slice of the pie. I don't believe he's left. I think he's well respected for building up UFC to something that passed boxing in certain terms, in terms of being a consistent pay-per-view draw. So I think it'd be very welcome. There'd be a lot of issues. It's not like we're close to this happening, but it would be interesting because Endeavor's making giant moves going public. Yeah. Although I think you saw Dana White's comments about if they did go public. He basically said, if UFC then would go public, I'm not interested. I wouldn't be there.
Danny, what's under the radar?
I mean, he also said when the Fertitta brothers would leave, he'd leave. But
but on that point, though, because if you go public, the financials go public. And if you read that Endeavor statement on when they did go public, there were the risks written out in there. And one of the risks are fighters' unions. Yep. One of the risks are concussion lawsuits. I mean, could the UFC exist as it does now if the financials were public?
Probably, but it would be certainly. I think they want to solve this other lawsuit that they have and bury the Ali Act in Congress as thoroughly as possible. All right. In the meantime, what's under the radar, Dan?
John Lineker is asking for a fight or his release. He did recently an interview with MMA Junkie and basically said he's working at a pet shop, which I can't really picture, but sure. He's working at a.
I'm sorry. He actually said this?
Yeah, he's working at a pet shop. And he has 5 kids, and he doesn't really have money to, sustain him because he's fought 4 times in 30 months. He's fought 3 times since 2017, and he just doesn't get booked. Now, to be fair, I went back and looked at his record. There is 3 canceled bouts within that span, and 2 of them came due to injury from his part. But nonetheless, he heals up and he wants to fight. He says he's healthy now and he's not getting any fight. The guy who he fought last just got a fight against, Rafael Sansa. So he's pretty frustrated with the way the promotion is booking him. Apparently it's not enough. And clearly, obviously, 4 fights in 30 months is not enough. And the dude wants to make money. He wants to make some money and feed his family. So he's either asking for a fight or his release. And
that's the opposite of John Fitch. And all those other
it's also super weird because he's super exciting. Not only is he exciting, but he's actually a legit talent. I wouldn't say maybe top 5, but you're definitely in the top 15. So
when you have that power, you're always a top 5 talent.
Always. Yeah. So I don't know why the UFC perhaps isn't booking him. Perhaps not many people want to take him on. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. God, working at a pet shop.
Pet shop, yeah.
Man.
It's very Rocky 1, right? Adrian?
Did he work at a pet shop?
She did.
Did she?
Yeah, well, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Rocky 1, yeah. Philadelphia, nothing?
I guess I forgot. All right, so last for me then, it was just before the show it came out, or perhaps something, that's when I saw it anyway, so whatever that's worth. Felicia Spencer is going to be back in action. She just beat Megan Anderson at UFC Rochester. Congratulations, you go from beating Megan Anderson, your prize is you get to fight Cyborg for a non-title fight, which means probably no extra money.
Yeah.
So what is she making? The bare minimum, 10-10, 20-20, whatever it is? And you have to fight, I know she just got bodied by Amanda Nunes, but still Cyborg for crying out loud. Yeah, it's going to be, I think, the co-main slot for UFC 240. Now, I actually interviewed Felicia after she beat Megan. Pop quiz, boys. What does she do? Does not work at a pet store. What's her real job?
Can you give us a clue? What's it related to?
Okay, math.
Teacher?
What kind?
I would just go out there and say 5th grade.
What about you? Hazard a guess, please.
She's a health teacher.
No, she is an algebra teacher. Can you believe that? Algebra. And some pre-calc in there. And I actually asked her, I was like, oh, you must be psyched to be off the summer. No, she does online teaching, which means no summers off. In fact, she has to teach the donks who failed and are trying to keep up with their peers, so they take summer school. And poor Felicia Spencer has to teach these retreads and also prepare for Cyborg for what is probably going to be not a ton of money. I'm excited for her because I actually think she's like crazy talented.
Yeah, she's really good grappler. Yeah.
You don't want to talk about like from unknown to now you're fighting Cyborg in the co-main event of a pay-per-view. Oof.
Yeah, here's 2 plane tickets to hell.
Yeah.
Sign your soul away now, yeah.
That is a tough grind, so good luck to her. That should be an interesting fight. All right. We're not quite done, though. These questions, boys, I'm telling you, you're going to like these ones. Sometimes I'm like,
I always hate on the MMA Beat questions, for the most part.
Here's the thing. They've been really bad for like 6 months. Now, we've had a couple of weeks here or there that were pretty good. They used to be a lot better, and I don't know what happened. Like, people just stopped trying. They'd be like, hey, who wins, a hippo or a rhino? Like, what kind of question is this? These are terrible questions. Favorite food, hot dog or other hot dog? Why are you even writing words? That this one today, there's a couple of deeper ones that I thought were a little bit more interesting. So without further ado, keep sending them using the hashtag the MMA Beat. My only request, just make them interesting. They can be about anything. Just put a little bit of effort into them, and you'll get selected like you did, or whoever does, for the upcoming After the Beat. We will answer those questions right now. And we're back after the beat. My name is Luke Thomas. That's Danny Bigote Segura. I'm just going to stick that on you now. I love it. And at the end is Applesauce Trash Can McGee, the man himself, Brian Campbell. Boys, we have taken their questions using the hashtag the MMA Beat. I have promised you some better ones today. Let's roll the dice here. Okay, first, this is from John Snowden, our colleague, which I thought was I don't know if he made that picture. But he asked the question, how do you guys maintain, well, not just us, but how do you maintain enthusiasm for main events like the one announced for Sacramento? Is it time for MMA Beat reporters, not us, but like lowercase beat, to stop treating every UFC event as relevant simply because it has UFC in the name, Brian? I actually think that this is a fair point. And I got to tell you, in this ESPN era, man, when they came out, I was there and you were there when, TJ fought Henry. I'm like, wow, man, this new marriage is off to a bang.
Yes.
Boy, it just feels like a sexless marriage right now, buddy. I got to be honest. There is just, and I know it's going to pick up in the summer, and I know 238 is right around the corner, and whatever.
How many years you been married? That's every marriage. All right, keep.
I'm doing fine, but the point being is as follows. It has the enthusiasm for this streaming. Like, think about it this way, right? What was the benefit of streaming? Convenience. Right? You can get on your phone, blah, blah, blah. Everything is all automatically on demand. Like, you can just go and check it out. I think that has made the UFC a wee bit lazy, and I think it's made the consumers a wee bit lazy. So they're like, catch it later. Or UFC's like, do we really need to stack this card? And so as a consequence, people are way more checked out than they were when, I'm not saying the television situation was the best. Let me finish. I'm not saying the television situation was the best. What I am saying was put a little bit more fire under your ass, both as a consumer and as a promoter. Do you think that's fair or not?
I disagree with that. I think the streaming TV doesn't matter. You're going to DVR or whatever.
You don't detect a noticeable downgrade in enthusiasm for the off-pay-per-view event?
I just notice a downgrade of enthusiasm when the card sucks. And in this day and age with large TV deals where you have to meet a certain amount of dates, this isn't the first year UFC's been stretched, and we're seeing these type of cards that just don't excite you. Not to the point of that.
Jose, you don't think that the visibility of being behind a paywall influences how fans feel about it? It clearly does.
Making that argument of will people find it accidentally more if it's on TV as opposed to streaming it where you have to go out of your way.
It's not even accidentally. Dude, you put stuff behind a paywall, its visibility goes away.
I will agree with you on the idea of people finding it on fight night. I will disagree on the idea of whether it's streamed or on TV. Will the excitement heading into the bout be any different? I think no, whatever we can argue that. The idea of what our responsibility is in terms of as quote-unquote beat writers. Look, I'm a MMA writer for CBS Sports. When it's these in-between cards that are not sexy and don't move the needle, guess what? I don't write previews for them. I don't write live recaps for them. And we've had questions in the beat off before. People say, look, if the UFC fight's really bad, do you watch it that weekend? And we've gone and said,
no.
I'll go DVR the main event and check it out. So what else?
In fairness to John, I'm not sure what he's asking. Like, should we not report on the fact that the UFC made a main event? Like, I think you have to report on that fact. The question is, what
event coverage?
Yeah, like what resources do you devote to that event? Probably very little, of
course.
Right?
I mean, different websites had different stylistics and ideas.
That's also
so CBS
true.
Sports were chasing clicks, and that's not a clickable, thing for the most part.
I mean, for people that are covering MMA as their beat, obviously it's their responsibility to cover this event. But you can choose how much resources you spend on it, because at the end of the day, also, like, media has to make money. And let's be honest, how much is UFC Sacramento gonna generate in clicks? So if you need to fly somebody out there, maybe you're not going to do that, and then you'll just do sort of a basic coverage. But I'm a little bit split between what you guys are saying. I do think, for example, if you got two identical cards and, one of them is behind a paywall and one is just on TV, that might just be enough of a difference for somebody to be like, you know what, I'll watch it. F it. Rather, if it's on streaming and you have to pay and sign up, you're like, you know what, no, I'm not going to do this and I'm going to leave. But I do agree with you in the sense of, if the UFC puts on a fantastic cards, you're going to watch regardless, whether it's on paywall or if it's on TV. If it's a good card and it's interesting, you're going to go out of your way to watch it.
I'm not sure I believe that. And I'll tell you what also happens when you put a show, any kind of show, anything behind a paywall. Here's what happens. Not only do folks not catch it accidentally because it's not floating free in the ether, and this is true for any media content, whether it's behind a New York Times paywall, I have a radio show behind a paywall, I'm very familiar with this. Here's what ends up happening. Not only is it again, there's I'll just catch it as I'm flipping channels or whatever. The other part is, if it's a UFC event, I think the ESPN decides, well, okay, how many resources do we need to devote to promote this? And then that goes down. It has this feedback loop over time where everything gets depressed. Because, like, why aren't the main event fighters for an ESPN Plus card on SportsCenter every time?
That's a fair point.
How can that not be the case? I watch SportsCenter. You know how much dumb shit is on SportsCenter? 90% of it is, look at this squirrel running on the field on this low light for some, pick a town, the Scranton Squirrels minor league team or whatever. They'll air bloopers, and you can't have two main event fighters going in there. It's like I was awake with my daughter the other day, feeding her at 4 a.m. This was before UFC Rochester. They had SportsCenter on at the early Saturday, and they had a feature with Rafael dos Anjos and Kevin Lee. I woke back up and watched SportsCenter later in that day. It was absent. They weren't running it, and I was like, "Really? You're going to air this at 4 a.m. when I'm bottle feeding my daughter? Like, what value is that?" Like, so to me, it has a major depressive effect, and I am feeling it in the fan base.
That's probably ESPN saying they think UFC fans work third shift and are up that time anyway.
Yeah, maybe. You know what? Yeah. That actually is a fair point. That is a fair point. Next. All right, there, Dan's. Who wins this weekend? Liverpool or Spurs, my friend?
Liverpool.
Tell me why Liverpool's going to win.
Well, I think they have a better team. And also, I feel like if anyone's going to choke in the final, it's going to be Spurs. Also, Liverpool might be, they're definitely, I think they might be the best team in Europe right now. They're really, really
They're up there, yeah.
They're really,
They're very good.
I think Man City should be, involved in that conversation.
Also, Tottenham's run to the finals was it was amazing, and at the same time, luck.
Yes,
to a strong degree.
Yeah. Ajax fell apart, in the last,
literally the fifth minute of stoppage time.
Yeah. But obviously in Champions, Champions is a ruthless competition. We see this all the time.
Look at Brian, But Mr. Gas Station Food is too good for the most popular game in the world. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right.
Also, I'm not a big fan of the Spurs. I kind of like them because of Davinson Sanchez, Colombian center back.
Defender.
But man, after that World Cup, man, Harry Kane.
Yeah.
We're not cool anymore.
No, we're not.
Go Liverpool.
God, when those Brits were like, "It's coming home," I was like, "Shut up. You're all annoying. It's not going anywhere near London. F off." Here's what I would say. I probably think Liverpool's going to win too. I think it's got a better team. Yeah. Did you watch the Europa League final yesterday?
Yes, I did.
Dude,
shout out to Chelsea, dude.
It
wrecked Arsenal.
What a calamity.
Hey, shout out to Sarri, too. That man gets a lot of hate. 2 cup finals. Europa League and champion spot for next year.
Hold on, they were in Baku, Azerbaijan. First of all, their Armenian player, who I obviously have a soft spot for, Henrik Mkhitaryan for Arsenal, couldn't even go. And did you see this? Here's what kills me. The soccer, there's still a lot of soccer stadiums in the world that are just track and field stadiums that they convert. So you have the soccer field, and then there's the track around it, and then there's the audience at the end. It's like the worst viewing experience ever, although El Campín is that way.
Yeah.
And
I mean, let's be honest.
All right, whatever. The stands were half full. It was awful to watch on television, and
it was a good game, though.
It was a good game. And then afterwards, Arsenal Fan TV, shouts to those boys, Mr. DT and Troops. It was delightful to watch their misery. And not that I actually like Arsenal.
It's entertaining.
I actually like Arsenal, but that channel is
amazing.
It's only really great when they're out there losing. And boy, did they lose. So there you go. Next.
All right, donks. Yeah.
I like Jose. I love MMA fans. Jose, go back for just a second. I'll read this in a minute. There is one thing I can't stand about MMA fans. Not all of them. But the one thing that just drives me nuts is when MMA fans are like, the only sport I watch is MMA. It's like, do you know how uninteresting a person you have to be where the only sport you like is MMA? Like, you're basically being like, the only sandwiches I eat are peanut butter and jelly. I don't eat anything else. Really? That's the only sandwich you eat? Like, you don't, understanding MMA, you actually get a better understanding of it watching other sports and learning about athleticism and what each sport requires and what skill sets look like and how participatory rates are affected. And oh, by the way, athletic excellence in any form is typically pretty great. MMA is my favorite sport, I can admit that, but people who are like, I only watch MMA, please don't talk to me. We have nothing in common. All right, just want to get that. So you being like high and mighty, I don't watch soccer over there. It's only the most popular game in the world. That's all, you know. But Brian Campbell has it figured out.
I'm an American. Thank you.
I don't watch that communist kickball. Next. All right, here, boys. We've seen subtle changes to the unified rules of MMA, combat jiu-jitsu takeoff, ONE FC stage, kickboxing bouts in MMA gloves. That is true. And bare-knuckle boxing become one of the hottest topics in pugilism. Guys,
hottest, really?
Well, okay, whatever. Did we stumble into an era of MMA innovation and not even know it? That's a very good question. I would challenge a couple things. One, I don't think bare knuckle boxing is the hottest thing going. Also, combat jiu-jitsu is an interesting innovation, but is a bit of a promotional dud. That being said, you know what combat jiu-jitsu is? Basically, you can slap each other around. You can't open hand strikes.
Pancrase style.
Dude, I'd love to see Nate Diaz in combat jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, right. So
Stockton slapping everybody.
So what do we think, boys? Are we in a bit of a sort of an interesting era here?
Maybe, yeah. Now that, you know, when you put it all together, maybe, yeah.
I mean,
there are some things.
The popularity of specialization, taking mixed martial arts and separating it a bit, using that popularity to, I mean, it can only go so far, right?
Yeah. I really like the combat jiu-jitsu one. I think that one's interesting. We've seen, for example, Gilbert Burns fought, who was it? Gleison Tibau. So two UFC fighters, one former, going at it in combat jiu-jitsu. And I think it offers a good room for guys that are really good at jiu-jitsu, that are thinking about transitioning into MMA. It offers a good space for them to like go in there, try it out, and be like, you know, maybe MMA is something I can do. Which, you know, it's a bridge and it's innovation.
So the interesting thing to consider here, it's a point I've made on when I used to do the live chat more commonly. The UFC did MMA a big favor in terms of keeping it alive by going and getting regulation. But we talked about the innovation problem. A, there's not enough of it, and B, when it does happen, it's uneven. By going to all the state commissions, they reduced the ability of another promoter to come along and say, oh, you know what, they had to do it this rule, we'll change all the rules and we'll be different. They locked everyone into a style that benefits themselves, which, you know, hey, if you're the one paying to get it regulated, I guess that's the, you know, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So what I love about this is you have Asian promoters like ONE FC. They got a lot of questions about them, but one of the things they do well is that they don't use a 10-point must system. I love that as well. On the jiu-jitsu side, people are constantly trying to innovate. I think combat jiu-jitsu is not all that great. In fact, the World Championships in the Gia this weekend, that's the best jiu-jitsu in the world. But I agree. I like that they're trying. BKFC, I like how folks are just like, well, what would happen if you did fight in a cage but with boxing gloves? Or if you fought in a ring with MMA gloves but it was kickboxing rules? And I love how all of this experimentation is happening. It's just mostly happening overseas or outside the UFC MMA sphere.
Yeah.
Because all that is just locked into place, unfortunately.
Will any of it lead to significant rule innovation within the MMA space?
I think so. I mean, once it wouldn't be immediate, but I think in the long term, once we start seeing the success of other promotions and the success of other, you know, rule sets, I think ultimately, you know, the UFC is going to do what's best for them. And so, you know, it might bleed out into the promotion and here in the States.
My whole point about innovation is, like, if you think about what the NFL does year over year, they make a lot of really bad calls about what is reviewable, how should the goalposts be in terms of far apart, where do you put the ball when you kick off. Like, there's a lot you don't like about that. But what you do, and that can lead to its own set of problems, but what I really appreciate about what the NFL does is they try. They try to innovate. They might get some boneheaded decisions here or there, but to answer your question, most innovations are not going to be great. All you need is one good one, and you can take that very far. So, like, are these the ones that I love the most? I don't know if I feel all that great about them. The kickboxing one with the MMA gloves I kind of like a little bit. But is that going to change the game? I don't know. Keep trying. Keep trying, because we're going to find one that's going to be great. Good question. Next. Luke, who do you dislike more, Drake or Draymond Green? I had to put this in there because I'm selfish. I can't believe people actually like Drake. Let me take that back. If you're a 13-year-old girl and you like Taylor Swift, I get liking Drake. Under any other circumstance, someone sell me, you're the resident millennial, what is the appeal of Drake?
He has some good songs.
Does he?
Yeah.
We're talking about the artist or the
Does he, though?
Look, I'm not a Drake fan. I'm not a Drake
All
fan.
right, so
but
I trust your judgment.
There are some songs that are kind of good.
Now, when you say good for...
You know, you hear them when, you know, you go out and stuff, and why are you looking at me weird? Drake's all right. He does have some bangers.
Does he have some bangers, Danny?
Yeah, and he does features with other artists that are good.
Yeah. He got some club bangers?
Yeah.
Does he?
Yeah, I would say so.
I don't think he does. Now, I know he's popular in ways that I'll never be. I understand that, but...
are you clowning the professional sports hanger on Drake, or are you clowning Drake the artist?
Well, 80% sports hanger-oner. The RJ, like, we had Spike Lee, who was super annoying, but Spike Lee made Do the Right Thing, right? I mean, what's Drake's Do the Right Thing? Fucking called me on the phone at 4 a.m. song? That dumbass thing that turned into a meme? That's his.
All I'm doing, that was a decent song.
Dude, Do the Right Thing is like a borderline cinematic masterpiece.
That's art. These bangers, are they art?
They're not. I mean, they're not. I'm not taking.
Like, he doesn't make art.
I'm not taking them as like,
music.
wow, what a exactly. Wow, what a musician, what a talent. I'm like, listen here and take take some time to like admire his music.
I can't argue he's not popular because he's crazy.
But
popular.
he makes popular music.
Okay. Well, Spike Lee made art. Well, he's had some duds too, but he like, I'll forgive him all the duds for, like, he got game. Like,
also, the meme culture around Drake is pretty good.
But to your point, the 80% I can't stand him for is his on the court. Joe Biden, stop touching people. What is wrong with him? Where he's out there just rubbing Nick Nurse's back. You know Drake is that close talker. Like, when he drinks, he gets up at everyone's face and he's got that breath where you can tell he hasn't brushed it since the morning. And
that'll stay around on your beard for a while.
And he's like 4 tequila shots and 2 Coronas deep, and his breath smells like he's been eating out of a Porta-John, and he's right up in your grill, and he like touches people unnecessarily. Like, that's what I can't stand. It's like, and this guy, everyone's like, yeah, Drake, let Drake be Drake. Fuck Drake. Get him off the court. Get the old guy with the Apollo hook to pull him off, as far as I'm concerned. I can't believe people defend this moron. But they do. They do. Show me his Do the Right Thing, please. That's what I want to hear. All right, next. Do you guys ever regret crossing the line from fan to journalist pursuing MMA coverage professionally? In other words, what are your thoughts on turning something you love into turning something you do for money? Now,
this is a great question.
It's a phenomenal question. I told you the questions were better today.
Yes.
Folks, okay, here's the thing. Folks always think that when you do this, you're like, as a media guy, begging for sympathy. Oh, like, woe is me. Now I have to do it for money. I don't love it as much. But it's an interesting question, nevertheless. It does change your relationship to the sport. What do you guys think?
I agree 100%. I'm going to give you an example. You hate when I say pro wrestling. I get it. But I cover pro wrestling, and out of the boxing, MMA, and pro wrestling that I cover, it demands the most out of me each week. There's a set in stone number of hours of shows, and then you add in the pay-per-view, and you add in the shoulder content. It's a lot. And when it becomes, I have to watch this at a certain time frame and have hot takes, and you know what I mean? It becomes a thing where it becomes a grind, and you lose the love for it. And I can relate to that.
Do you still love pro wrestling? Didn't you watch AEW?
I did, and I loved it as a pure fan in ways that I hadn't loved wrestling in years.
Right, so like, there's still something there, right?
There's still something there, just like when we see a Adesanya Gastelum, and I was cage side for that, and just juices popping out of my body. Absolutely incredible. That love is there, but like anything, when you're it's like, we say, do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's so true. And I'll push anybody. If you're in a job you hate, if you're behind that, hold on, if you're behind that cubicle and you hate it and you're like, man, I want to sell hot dogs on the ocean, sell hot dogs on the ocean. But when you do something you love and you got to grind, you don't love it as much in the end. So would I love sometimes to just be a fan on a Saturday night when there's big time UFC or big time boxing and just sit with a beer with like my neighbor and just, I would love the crap out of that.
I think fans have this perception that we just, hop on Twitter on Saturday night and have a few beers or go to the bar and just tweet about it and that's our work. Half of the time, I'm not even watching the fights. I'm like, working. I'm doing a bunch of stuff or whatever duties I have that
Write
day.
up, social.
Exactly,
Yeah.
social. Scrums are coming in, got to listen to them, find headlines, publishing them on YouTube, etc. So half of the time I'm missing, the fights. So from a fan perspective, it does kind of suck in that way, but I don't regret it. I like this job, so.
Yeah, you can't regret it in the end. I mean,
no, I certainly don't regret. In fact, one of the better choices I've made in my life.
Same here.
But this idea like, if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. What nonsense. This is total garbage. You absolutely will work.
But the payoffs are pretty incredible.
It's just a better situation. What I would say that I found was that when I made things that I loved, when I tried to, because there was a couple of failures, but in the case of taking a passion and turning it into a profession, what I found was that I was better at the profession because I was willing to give more to it. And I had just a thirst for it and a consumption of it and a willingness to want to give back in ways that I didn't in other cases. And that's still true today. So it's not like I get up and I'm like, this is not work. Like, you have a job to do. You have to do it professionally and sometimes in ways you don't want to. I got to go do 3 hours of radio. You think you think I'm super pumped to go do 3 hours of radio? I would love to get on a train and just nap and have a Pinot Grigio out of a box of wine, rather than go do 3 hours of radio. But
is that classy? I don't think so.
They opened up a liquor store at Penn Station now. It's been a game changer. But the point being is, but if you want to be a pro about things, you got to do some things you don't like, and you got to do them well. What I know is, I feel this way, when the mic cracks, I'm all in. I'm all in, and I give.
Yep.
And I can't manufacture that anywhere else. I can't. I've tried. I have tried to have had jobs where I was paid well to do it. And if I didn't love it, I just found myself half-assing it and then being mad at myself for it,
And when the complaints go out the window is when you are ringside, cage side, whatever side, and you remember why you do this and why you love it, and you get that kicks you right in the feel spot, and that's
the last thing I would say though is it has changed my relationship to it, not merely transactionally, but before, as a fan, I was in love with all the ambiance of it, the pomp and the circumstance and the lights and the storylines and the trash talk. Now,
you have become a hardened.
It just bores me. Because here's the thing.
There's a lot of it too.
Not only is there a lot of it, folks don't realize this. It's 99% not real. It's just not real. Like when fighters do interviews, sometimes they're great. Like Anthony Smith, I thought was real. I think Gustafsson tries to be candid, but a lot of times. These are facsimiles of conversations. They're not real. Fighters lie all the time, partly strategically, partly because they have to, partly because they want to. I fell in love because of my job with fighting itself, because even then you can lie, but it's so much more honest of a human experience than anything else. And in MMA, when these guys are taken to Twitter, folks ask me, "Would you see what they said on Twitter?" I don't care. This is probably not real. There's probably nothing to that's real. It doesn't move me.
I get mad at that, and I get that where you're just like, look, what's real is in that cage. All this other stuff is BS to bring in casuals and all that.
Yeah.
But you know what? That BS, that gravy on top of the meat.
Yeah.
Damn, does it taste good? I
wish I could tell you it tasted good. For me, it doesn't.
I would rather be fired
It depends
the hell
on the
off.
kind. I'm about it.
Even if it's artificial, even if I know when I'm watching a press conference, the two guys are going at it, that they're just hyping it.
Again,
that's part of the
I
experience.
didn't say all of it. I said 99% of it. So, for example, when John Malkovich did the Habib McGregor highlight reel, I had hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Like, whoa, that was crazy. I interviewed Jim Lampley at Mayweather McGregor Media Row, and I asked him, what was his favorite post-fight interview? And it was after Chico Corrales came back against Castillo, and I watched the hairs on his arm stand up when he spoke about what Corrales said to him. These are moments that stick in my mind. I love those. But, people don't realize in MMA how much interaction and things that are produced are not real. They're not real, or partially real. I have no time for that. But watching art in motion, I have found a deep and unquenchable love for that.
And fighting is art.
And fighting is art.
best.
It absolutely is art. Next. What's the best movie of 2019 that you've seen so far? What is the worst? Boys, what do you think?
Bro, I haven't gone to movies forever.
Yeah, I'm going to feel like an outsider in here who only watches MMA. I don't think I've gone to the theater in a
Why do I do
haven't
these
gone to
questions?
theater in a while.
Why do I put these questions in here about like anything other than MMA? Here I am criticizing fans. Like, can't believe these fans.
Some of us don't have as much free time as others.
Oh, is that what I have with 8 jobs free time? Is that what I
How
have?
many hours of pro wrestling I watch per week? I'm a big Star Wars nerd. You want to talk about Star Wars? I can do that with you. Everything else,
You haven't seen it. It's freaking June and you've not seen a movie?
I've not been to the theater this calendar year.
Okay,
Yeah,
you don't.
same here.
I have.
Oh my God.
I have.
I gotta go. I actually want to go see John Wick.
I've not seen that either. Yeah.
I want to see it so bad. I just gotta make the time.
I have
for it.
great news for you both. You know, you don't have to go to the movies
Really?
to watch a movie. It's innovation. Kind of amazing. No.
But kind of going to the movies is that's nice. I like going to the movies.
I would say no one saw Avengers. You have kids, don't you?
I do. They're not there yet.
How old are they?
They're 11.
Okay, I saw.
They're young 11 though. Yeah.
I saw this. I forget the name of it because it was in Spanish. Do you remember that movie by the Colombian filmmakers, like Eye of the Serpent or whatever? They made another one, Birds of Passage, I think is what it's called.
My mom saw it in Colombia when she was there.
it
That
takes-
was kind of old though. That's like a few months ago.
Yeah, so I saw it on streaming.
Yeah,
saw
I
on
haven't seen
streaming.
it, but I've heard it was really.
I use Fandango now, so I saw it on streaming.
Yeah, I mean,
Birds of Passage.
okay, when you talk about movies, I've seen some movies on like Netflix. I saw Roma, for example.
So I've not seen that. Is that good?
Roma's really good.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's a little sad, and it's one of those movies that it's not really like. There's no plot and there's no sort of end. It's kind of just like an experience, you know.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty good movie. And my memory is failing right now, but I'm sure I've seen some others on Netflix.
So this is where it happens. This is where it's good to have a daughter. It keeps you up at 4 in the morning.
So when I got my surgery, I was watching a bunch of movies. I'm a big zombie guy. I've been a big zombie guy before they were even popular. Like when I was in like 5th grade, like I remember watching like a bunch of zombie movies. So there's something great about the zombie genre is that there's so many shitty movies. They make them very cheap.
They're all B movies.
Yeah.
Mostly.
So I saw this one in Paris. This guy that goes to a party, gets blacked out, wakes up, and everyone's a zombie, and then he's just living in an apartment for months. And that was actually a good one.
You guys have Netflix, right?
Yes.
Have you guys seen Train to Busan?
Yeah, that's an amazing movie.
It's
too.
a zombie movie?
Yeah.
All the zombies in Walking Dead.
Korean, right?
Yeah, South Korea.
Joe actually recommended me that movie.
It's a great movie. All the zombies in Walking Dead, they're all kind of slow and stupid. The zombies in Train to Busan are like hyperactive and sprint and bust down walls and doors. Yeah.
Have you seen Dawn of the Dead?
I think a while ago.
Yeah, that one's good.
I've been watching Real Art, like season 2 of Cobra Kai on YouTube. Have you got into it? I'm not fooling around here. I'm not trying to crack jokes. It's freaking brilliant.
I saw the first season and loved it, and then I watched 2 episodes of the second season. And I was like, I don't care about the lives of teens.
That's
And then
TV.
I just lost interest.
It digs so deep in your nostalgic hole that it just keeps.
It does. It does. Miyagi did all that stuff. Yeah.
How these actors as adults, how their fake lives have grown.
I would say the 2 good movies to recommend. Birds of Passage, if you've not seen it. It's out on streaming. Here's another good one for you. Speaking of sad movies, but also kind of good. It's a Japanese movie called Shoplifters. Oh, my God. That is a absolutely...
On what platform?
Just $3 on YouTube. I will go to youtube.com/movies. $3, and you can watch so many good movies. Yeah. I watched Shoplifters, and that is a phenomenal piece of movie making. Like, I cannot recommend that enough. Worst movie? What's a terrible movie? I've got. There's this $700 million movie, the Chinese movie, that's on Netflix. Joe, do you know what I'm talking about? Where the plot is, they spent $700 million on this. The plot is like the sun is exploding, which it eventually will, and it's going to kill the Earth. So they put engines all around the Earth to move it out of orbit. It is truly Wandering Earth. Holy shit, this movie sucks. Whoa! You would think for $700 million you could find some script writers and people who could put a plot together that didn't suck. Nope. They failed that test. Wow. The suits are cool. Everyone has cool suits on. That's kind of neat.
Hey, we can keep talking about zombies and soccer all you want here.
Also,
this is great.
Yeah, I'm sorry we have a diversity of interests.
This is not a movie, but TV shows. Have you seen Chernobyl on HBO?
No.
It's good, man.
Yeah?
It's really good. I'm watching it with my roommate right now. It's really good.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll give it a look. All right,
I've been rewatching The Wire. That takes about 6 months.
The Wire's awesome. Yeah. The Wire is hard. My wife, she speaks English, obviously. She's fluent.
Yeah, of course.
But there's so much dialogue in The Wire that we have to watch it with subtitles, and even then there's a lot of slang.
I even watch it with
It's
subtitles.
hard to watch with somebody who doesn't speak English natively. One more, last one. What's the creepiest paranormal encounter you've had? Let's go to Brian, because I know you've had one.
Yeah, I have. I have. Wow, yeah, I have.
Of course you have!
I've had a bunch, actually.
At a gas station, abandoned gas station.
Yeah, I've had a lot. I could make myself sound like a real weirdo here if I wanted
Just
to.
give me a good one.
I'll give you
Sell
one.
me.
Okay, I
Sell
used to
me.
work at ESPN. I used to work the really bad hours, drive home 4 in the morning, after a long night. And I was driving, and a coworker of mine was behind me, so I had proof. There was something in the air, a circular airplane-ish, helicopter-ish thing that was just hovering above, and then disappeared in
Now,
light
it
speed.
wasn't a fart cloud?
No, and disappeared at a sickening speed.
Okay.
And the next day I called that. I just was like, is it 4 a.m. or do I have that? Because I would listen to that creepy alien radio show that's on all night. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
I'd get into that stuff. And then it happened. I called the guy and I'm like, you saw that, right? He's like, yeah, that's all that.
Danny, you ever had one?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, there was where I grew up, it's suburban, right? And then in South Florida, there's this other place called Southwest Ranches, which houses are bigger. They're acres, and usually people have horses and
Rich folk.
Not necessarily.
You got big property and horses.
Big
bro. You're
property,
doing
yeah,
well in my
but
book.
a lot of those houses are old and run down.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like a lot of people that live there, yes, there's really nice houses, but some people have just owned the property for a really long time.
Got it.
And there's a lot of abandoned houses. So my friends and I, in high school, we were bored. We decided to go to this abandoned house. Supposedly it was haunted. So it was super far, deep into Southwest Ranches. We had to drive. We were driving, and there stopped being like light posts, so it was just dark. We just had the lights on the car. So we get to the house. Grass is like up to your waist, and there's like a curved path to the house, and the house is pretty far. And so we had some flashlights. We went. As soon as I started seeing the needles on the ground, I'm like, you know what, guys, this ain't for me. I'm gonna back out. So a few of us backed out, and we just went back to the car. And we were just back in the car waiting for the other people to go in this abandoned mansion and check it out. And all of a sudden we feel the car move forward, and it was off and parked, and like a bang, like a loud bang on the back window. So immediately I thought, these guys came behind us to try to scare us. This is all a joke. So I got off the car and there's nothing. And then as soon as I look up, I see my friends running out of the house. They were already running, and I just see a flashlight move around. And then we're just like, what the hell happened? So they got here, and they're like, yeah, we heard like a door close and like a loud bang. Basically the exact same thing that we heard, but they heard it in the house, and we heard it in the back of the car. Like I was in the back seat, I heard the window like vibrate. And then we just got out of there, and I'm like,
Given the needles, it was probably just a drug.
There was nobody around. I'm telling you, there was nobody.
Sounds a little bit Blair Witch.
If there were needles there, then the people had been there.
Had been. Oh yeah, there's graffiti. I didn't go in, but they were saying there was graffiti like all over the mansion and whatnot.
So I'll say this: people who say they have paranormal experiences, 99.9% of the time, I think less of them as people.
Oh, thanks. I'm telling you, it happened.
Hold on. There's a caveat. Did you guys see the article? The reason why I picked this one. Did you guys see the article? It was like one of the top stories in the New York Times this past week.
Yeah.
2 Navy pilots. Well, more than that. There have been so many UFO encounters. Again, what does that mean? They don't know what it means. Like, what is that? They're not sure what it is. The Navy has had to change its guidance on how they report these things. And the New York Times spoke to, I think, 2 or 3 Navy pilots. And what they were saying was, like, first of all, you're a pilot. Like, that's in the military, you're an extremely high achiever to be flying a jet. Like, you have to be one of the very, 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 very best to even get that opportunity. So you have to be a high achiever, smart, the whole bit. They were saying that these guys were like seeing these things in orbit on their infrared that they couldn't see, but they were watching these things move that didn't make sense. Another one actually laid eyes on one, came back, and he goes, this guy had been the most normal, high-achieving pilot. He came back white. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He was describing certain things to other pilots. It's happening enough now where it's showing up on these infrared screens, if not visual, that the Navy is like, okay, we have to take, like, we don't know what's happening here. So I don't know. I'm still, color me extremely skeptical.
Believers.
Color me skeptical. On the other hand, when you start getting Navy pilots getting spooked, that's when I start taking notice. Hashtag indefense.
I've got other stories we could tell on the Patreon version of the show one day.
All right. Well, that is it for us today. Enjoy UFC Stockholm if you can. We will, of course, have coverage of it. I believe Pete C. Carroll.
Pete C. Carroll's there. There's actually interviews up now from his work in the media day.
There you go. So you can follow him on Twitter. You can also catch all the interviews and all the coverage live from Stockholm by MMA Fighting. We appreciate you guys watching. Until next time, for Brian, for Danny, I'm Luke. Hands up, chin down, let him fly. This is the MMA Beat.